I'm pleased to call this hearing to order, and I want to begin by welcoming our witness, Brenda Mallory, Chair of the Council on Environmental Quality, back before our committee today. We appreciate you being here to discuss the CEQ's work since your confirmation last year. Some of you heard me, she's heard me say this before, but I know of one Delawarean who's been the chair of the Council on Environmental Quality. He's a former governor. He's a Republican, and he had been a leader at the DuPont Company, became governor of Delaware. And when Richard Nixon was president, then later Gerald Ford, they nominated Russ Peterson, who served under two presidents, as chairman of CEQ. And I used to ask, I was in state treasurer, I used to ask Governor Peterson, what did you do when you were chair of CEQ? And he used a music analogy. He said, it's like when you're CEQ chairman, you're the orchestra leader. And you have an orchestra with many people playing instruments. They make different sounds, But the idea of the chair of the committee, the CEQ, is make sure that the different pieces that have, and the governor have, just like musical instruments, make sure that they play in harmony. And that's the way he described it to me. I think it's a pretty apt description. So the orchestra leader here today is Brenda Mallory, and we welcome you. We also thank you for celebrating Earth Day with us in Delaware last month. Your visits to Delaware State College and Delaware State University, and Delaware Technical Community College made a real impact on everybody we met, especially the kids, large and small. But they ran the gamut for everything from kindergarten to doctoral programs at Delaware State University. And you're welcome to visit us in Delaware at any time. Thanks for coming. Since the moment that he took our office, President Biden has made leading our country out of the greatest economic downturn since the Great Depression, as well as addressing climate change and advancing environmental justice, top priorities of his administration. The role that CEQ plays in achieving these goals cannot be understated, but it's not well understood by a whole lot of people. CEQ ensures, as I mentioned earlier, that federal agencies work in harmony to protect our environment and to improve public health, which is critical to reaching a nurturing environment for job creation and job preservation. We're always interested in how do we don't create jobs in what we do, but we help create that nurturing environment, and CEQ plays a vital role. With more than 8 million Americans back to work since President Biden took off, that's a lot of people working that weren't working a year ago. It's clear that CEQ's urgent work is not stymieing economic growth. Earlier this year, the fourth National Climate Assessment made clear that nations throughout the world must dramatically and urgently reduce emissions if we're to avoid the most devastating impacts of climate change. Driving to the train station this morning, I was hearing the kind of problems that they're having in New Mexico, fires, wildfires, and really devastating stuff. That is just another example of what we face. These impacts are already being felt in communities in the United States and across our planet, showing us just how vulnerable we are to climate change and extreme weather. This last week, we saw, I don't know about where y'all live, but on the East Coast, we had 4 days of rain, saw some of that in Washington, and produced flooding in places where, frankly, it doesn't flood a whole lot, including Delaware. But prior to that, in the last year alone, we witnessed record heat waves in Oregon, where only a third of households have air conditioning. Think about that. Wildfires burned millions of acres in California, Montana, Arizona, and other western states. The same hurricane that knocked out access to power and water for 1 million people in Louisiana and Mississippi then went on up the East Coast to produce flash floods in New Jersey and New York. People there actually drowned in those places, and especially in New York, actually drowned in their basements, unable to escape the torrent of floodwater. According to the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, damages from last year's disasters totaled roughly $145 billion. $145 billion, that's just in 1 year. So it's becoming increasingly clear that the administration's focus on climate change is both timely and, I believe, critical. Addressing the long-standing environmental inequities in our nation is equally important and also linked to climate change. We know that while climate change threatens to disrupt all communities and affects all aspects of our economy, it poses unique threats to communities that are already vulnerable. In other words, Americans living in lower income and marginalized communities have less ability to prepare for and recover from extreme weather. The least among us have the most to lose from inaction on climate. And that's why our federal agencies need to address these twin goals of climate action and environmental justice together. Fortunately, we have an important tool to improve federal analysis and decision-making, and that is the National Environmental Policy Act, known as NEPA. NEPA established the Council on Environmental Quality in 1969, and this was done in part to provide agencies with high-quality information on the environmental effects on their proposed actions. Over the years, we've made a number of adjustments to NEPA. It's not exactly the same as it was in 1969. We've made some tweaks and I hope improvements, ensuring that the law functions as intended while also not being overly burdensome to industry. Early this year, CEQ finalized revisions to the rule that implement NEPA. This restored critical protection under NEPA and also provided agencies and other stakeholders with greater certainty as they began to implement the programs created under the bipartisan infrastructure law, which has its roots, its origins literally in this room, in this committee. These revisions will ensure that agencies consider the cumulative impacts of a project, such as the implications for climate change and the question of whether the impact is on a community that's already vulnerable. CEQ also has been coordinating efforts across the federal government to improve the federal permitting process for clean energy technologies, such as carbon capture and sequestration, something that several of us are very much interested in. And today, we look forward to hearing more about those efforts from our witnesses. I would also be remiss if I didn't set the record straight with respect to the Biden administration's policy actions and gas prices in our country, something about which there's a fair amount of controversy, as we know. But the last time I checked, the United States is still the top oil and gas producer in the world, producing more than we consume. And with more than 9,000 unused approved permits to drill offshore, the oil and gas industry, not the federal permitting process, bears more than a little responsibility for the current level of domestic production, but we can get into more of that later. In addition to its permitting efforts, CEQ has also been hard at work delivering on the administration's promise to prioritize environmental justice and equitably distribute the benefits of climate actions. As part of that effort, CEQ has released a draft version of its climate and environmental justice screening tool, helping agencies better identify underserved or overburdened communities. And they've also recently hired, I believe, a new director of environmental justice to oversee this important work. CEQ has also established sustainability goals for federal buildings and other federal procurements and launched a $1 billion effort known as the America the Beautiful Challenge. The America the Beautiful Challenge to support conservation and restoration projects on federal lands. All this demonstrates, I believe, that the administration's commitment to leading by example when it comes to doing what is good and what is right for our planet. And so we're looking forward to hearing from you, Madam. Do people call you Chair Mallory? What is your official title? Pardon?
Sorry. Yes, they do say chair if I'm not able to stop them.
All right, well. All right, Ms. Mallory, we're delighted on the critical efforts that you're leading and whether CEQ has the resources it needs to effectively carry out your work. And before we do that, I'm going to turn it over to our ranking member for opening remarks and to get us started. We have a Delawarean, Greg Williams, who's been nominated to serve on the Federal District Court in Delaware. I'm introducing him in about 5 minutes on the Judiciary Committee, so I'll rejoin you shortly. And in the meantime, I leave you in good hands. All right, take care. Thanks so much.